I stared at my phone in disbelief as the notification popped up. $3,200 charged to my American Express. Vendor Luxury Events, Chicago. My hands started shaking as I clicked on the transaction details. I never authorized this. I hadn't even heard of this company before. My coffee grew cold beside my keyboard as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. Then my phone pinged again. An Instagram notification from my sister-in-law, Tiffany. I opened it to see an elaborate rooftop baby shower. Custom onesies laid out on a table. A massive balloon wall in pastel blues. Monogrammed favor boxes. The caption read, "Fully funded by our favorite fool." That's when I realized. The items in those photos matched the charge on my account. And I hadn't even been invited. My name is Juliet Crawford. I'm 32 years old and work as a financial advisor at Stonebridge Partners in downtown Chicago. The irony isn't lost on me. I help others manage their money while apparently being completely blind to what was happening with my own. I've been single since breaking off my engagement to Brian 3 years ago. He wanted someone who would put her career aside once we had children. I wanted both. We decided to want those things separately. My older brother Jake had always been my best friend growing up. Just 3 years apart, we shared everything. Secrets, dreams, and a fierce protectiveness toward each other. That started changing when he met Tiffany at a friend's wedding 5 years ago. Tiffany Barnes came from what she called old New England money, though I'd never seen much evidence of that wealth in action. What I did see was how quickly she identified me as competition for Jake's attention and loyalty. "Your sister sure has a lot of opinions for someone who's still single," she'd say with a laugh after I'd offer advice on anything. Or I guess when you don't have a family to consider, it's easy to be career-focused. Little digs that made Jake uncomfortable, but not enough for him to defend me. My mother Barbara had practically adopted Tiffany from day one. "She's going to give me grandbabies," she'd whisper excitedly at their engagement party. As if that were the sole measure of a woman's worth. My father William was more balanced, but he preferred peace to confrontation, so he'd just shrug apologetically whenever Mom and Tiffany ganged up on me. When Jake called 6 months ago to announce Tiffany was pregnant, I was genuinely happy for them. I sent a gift basket the next day. Organic prenatal vitamins, belly butter, and a gift card to a maternity store. Tiffany's thank you text was curt, "Thanks for the stuff." 2 weeks later, my mother called to tell me Tiffany was disappointed I hadn't offered to throw her a baby shower. "She's your sister now, Juliet. This is what families do. Mom, she has 4 sisters of her own. And a mother. And hasn't actually asked me. That's because you've made her feel like an outsider. She shouldn't have to ask." This was our typical dynamic. I was always expected to anticipate everyone else's needs while my own were an afterthought. Years ago, when I got my first big promotion, I'd given my mother a credit card connected to my account for family emergencies. Dad had just been laid off, and I wanted to make sure they had a safety net. The card was only supposed to be used with my explicit permission. I'd forgotten it even existed until that $3,200 charge appeared. After discovering Tiffany's Instagram post, I immediately called my mother. "Mom, did you use my emergency card for Tiffany's baby shower?" A pause. "Oh, that. Well, yes. The venue required a deposit right away. And you know your father and I are on a fixed income now. But why would you think I'd want to pay for a shower I wasn't even invited to?" Another pause, longer this time. "We thought you'd be uncomfortable there, honey. All those couples. All that baby talk. It's not really your scene, is it? But your name is in the thank you cards. Everyone knows you contributed." My stomach clenched. "Mom, that's not a contribution. That's theft. You used my card without permission for an event I wasn't welcome at." "Don't be so dramatic, Juliet. We're family. Besides, you can afford it. What else are you spending your money on? No husband, no kids." I hung up, my hands shaking. I logged into my account to freeze the card, then called to report the fraudulent charge. As I was on hold with the credit card company, Another notification from Instagram appeared. Tiffany had added a new comment to her post. Fully funded by our favorite fool. Something snapped inside me. I commented back, "Fool's done funding." Then I completed the fraud report, providing all the necessary documentation to dispute the charges. The customer service representative assured me they would investigate, and the charges would likely be reversed. I ended the call feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. Within minutes, my phone exploded with texts from my mother, father, and Jake. All variations of, "How could you?" and "You're overreacting." None acknowledging that what they did was wrong. I turned off my phone and stared out my office window at the Chicago skyline. This wasn't about the money. Not really. It was about respect. It was about boundaries that had been crossed too many times. And something told me this was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke up to 14 missed calls and 23 text messages. I scrolled through them with a growing sense of disbelief. Not one contained an apology. Instead, they were escalating accusations. From Mom, "You've embarrassed us all." The vendor called Tiffany about a payment issue. "Fix this immediately." From Jake, "What the fuck, Juliet?" Tiffany is in tears. "Is this how you treat family?" From Dad, "Your mother is very upset. Call her." And then there were the social media posts. Tiffany had been busy. A new post showed her tearfully cradling her baby bump, heartbroken. That some people's toxicity extends even to innocent babies. Family should be about support, not sabotage. The comments were filled with sympathetic responses, many from relatives and mutual friends who knew exactly who she was talking about. My cousin Amanda even tagged me, "Juliet Crawford. What is wrong with you?" I closed the app and took a deep breath. This wasn't going to blow over. I needed to be strategic. At work, I focused on my clients while trying to process what was happening. During lunch, I pulled out my personal laptop and logged into my bank accounts. What I found made my blood run cold. The baby shower charge wasn't an isolated incident. Over the past 8 months, there had been numerous smaller charges. Restaurants, department stores, even a weekend spa trip, all in the $200 to $600 range. Small enough that they hadn't triggered my alerts, large enough that together they added up to over $12,000. "You look like you've seen a ghost," said Sarah, poking her head into my office. Sarah had been my friend since college, and now worked in the compliance department at my firm. I turned my laptop toward her. "My family has been using my emergency credit card without my permission. For months." Sarah whistled low as she scanned through the transactions. "Juliet, this is fraud. This is identity theft. These people may be your family, but what they're doing is illegal." They don't see it that way. They think because we're family, what's mine is theirs. And what's theirs is theirs, I bet. Sarah sat down across from me. "You need to document everything. And you should talk to a lawyer." "A lawyer? That seems extreme." "Is it? Would you tell a client to just let someone steal thousands of dollars from them because they share DNA?" She had a point. I promised to think about it, and spent the rest of the afternoon researching family financial abuse. What I read made me sick. So many stories like mine. Family members who felt entitled to someone else's money, who used guilt and obligation to manipulate, who retaliated when boundaries were set. I was deep in research when my assistant buzzed me. "Juliet, your mother is here. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's insisting on seeing you." Before I could respond, my office door flew open. My mother stood there, her face flushed with anger. "What have you done?" she demanded loud enough for the entire floor to hear. "The credit card company called us. They're treating us like criminals." I stood up, keeping my desk between us. "Mom, this isn't the place. I'm at work." "Oh, I know exactly where you are. In your fancy office with your fancy title while your family struggles. Your brother and his wife are trying to prepare for a baby. And you're worried about what money you'll never use for a family of your own." The words stung precisely as they were intended to. Every eye in the office was on us. I could see my colleagues pretending not to listen while catching every word. Mrs. Crawford. Sarah appeared in the doorway. I need to ask you to lower your voice or leave the premises. My mother turned her fury on Sarah. And who are you to tell me how to speak to my daughter? This is a family matter. This is a place of business, Sarah replied calmly, and you're disrupting it. As security was called, my mother launched into her final attack. You've always been selfish, Juliet. Always thinking you're better than us. You're abandoning your family when they need you most. What kind of person does that make you? You're jealous of Tiffany's happiness, aren't you? Jealous that she has what you couldn't keep. Security arrived and escorted her out as she continued shouting. I stood frozen behind my desk, humiliation burning through me. After a moment, I realized my boss, Eleanor Winters, was standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. Juliet, my office. Now. I followed her woodenly, certain I was about to be reprimanded or worse. Eleanor was known for her zero-tolerance policy for personal drama at work. Once her door closed behind us, she gestured for me to sit. I'm so sorry, I began. That was completely unprofessional. And Eleanor held up a hand. Stop. I'm not going to fire you for having a difficult family. Lord knows we don't choose them. She leaned forward. I recognized what was happening out there. My sister did the same thing to me 15 years ago. I blinked in surprise. Eleanor had always seemed so put together, so immune to the messiness of personal problems. She cleaned out my savings account to pay for her daughter's wedding. A wedding I wasn't even invited to because my husband and I were too boring for their guest list. She gave a short, hard laugh. Family financial abuse is more common than you think, especially for women who are seen as successful. People assume your money is community property while theirs remains private. That's exactly how they see it, I whispered. Eleanor reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a business card. This is the attorney who helped me. She specializes in cases like ours. And here's the name of a good therapist. You'll need both. She slid them across the desk. Take the rest of the day off. Document everything. And, Juliet, this isn't your fault. I clutched the cards like lifelines. For the first time since seeing that charge notification, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't crazy for being upset. Maybe I wasn't the villain in this story. As I gathered my things to leave, my phone pinged with a text from Jake. We need to talk. Alone. Without Tiffany knowing, I stared at the message, a mix of hope and wariness rising in me. Was he finally seeing the truth? Or was this just another trap? 3 days later, I sat in Dr. Melissa Wright's office, perched uncomfortably on the edge of a plush couch. The therapist had a calm, steady gaze that made me feel both seen and nervous. Tell me about your relationship with money growing up, she said after I'd given her a brief overview of the current situation. I thought about it. My parents struggled financially. Dad worked in manufacturing until his plant closed when I was in high school. Mom was a part-time receptionist. There was always this undercurrent of stress about bills. And how did that affect you? I got a job at 16. Started saving. Got scholarships for college, but still worked 30 hours a week to avoid debt. I was determined not to live with that same financial insecurity. Dr. Wright nodded. And your brother? The question caught me off guard. Jake, he had different priorities. Sports. Social life. He's smart, but academics weren't his focus. Did your parents treat your earnings differently than they treated his? A memory surfaced. Me at 18, excited about saving enough for a used car, only to have my mother suggest I help pay for Jake's senior trip instead. He'll only have one senior year, Juliet. You can save for a car any time. I gave up the car. Jake went to Florida with his friends. He came back with a tan and stories. I kept working double shifts. They saw my money as family money, I said slowly. But Jake's earnings and opportunities were his own. Over the next hour, Dr. Wright helped me trace a pattern I'd never fully recognized. How I'd paid for Jake's car repairs when he wrecked his first vehicle. How I'd covered the security deposit on his first apartment because he needed to establish himself. How I'd loaned my parents money for a vacation after Dad's layoff, because they deserved some joy during a difficult time. None of those loans were ever repaid. None of that support was ever reciprocated. Juliet, Dr. Wright said gently as our session neared its end. What I'm hearing suggests a long-established family dynamic, where you've been assigned the role of provider without your consent. That's a form of emotional and financial abuse. The word abuse made me flinch. That seems harsh. They're not bad people. Abuse doesn't require malicious intent. It requires a power imbalance and exploitation. Your family may genuinely believe they're entitled to your resources. That doesn't make their behavior any less harmful to you. I left the session with homework to start setting financial boundaries and to document all the loans and gifts I'd provided to my family over the years. The exercise was eye-opening. Over 7 years, I'd given or loaned my family over $80,000. Money for Jake's failed sports equipment business. Money for my parents' roof repair. Money for endless emergencies that somehow never affected their vacation plans or my mother's shopping habits. That evening, my father called. Unlike my mother and brother, he sounded subdued. "Jules, this has gotten out of hand. Your mother is beside herself. Can we meet? Just you and me." Part of me wanted to refuse, but the tiny hope that someone in my family might actually listen won out. We agreed to meet for coffee the next morning at a neutral location, a small cafe halfway between my apartment and my parents' house. Dad looked older than I, remembered the lines around his eyes deeper. His shoulders slightly stooped. He'd once been imposing, 6'2" with hands strengthened by 30 years on factory floors. Now he seemed diminished. "Your mother doesn't know I'm here," he said, after we'd ordered. She's taking this hard." "Taking what hard, Dad? The fact that I reported fraud on my credit card? Or the fact that I'm finally standing up for myself?" He winced. "It wasn't fraud, Jules. Not really. We were going to tell you about the baby shower expenses. We just knew you'd say no if we asked first. So you decided to steal instead, and not even invite me." "That part wasn't right," he admitted, staring into his coffee. "Tiffany convinced your mother you wouldn't want to come. Said it would be awkward for everyone. And Mom just accepted that. Without even asking me." Dad sighed heavily. "There's something you don't know, Jules. Things have been difficult. Financially. The reverse mortgage we took out to help Jake start his business. It's underwater now. And your mother's medical bills from last year." "What medical bills?" Mom told me her surgery was fully covered by insurance. Dad looked genuinely surprised. "The insurance denied half the claim. We owe $57,000. We've been making minimum payments, but with the interest." I felt like I'd been punched. "Why didn't you tell me? Your mother didn't want you to worry." And then, when Tiffany got pregnant, he trailed off. "You thought I'd bail everyone out." Again, he didn't deny it. Instead, he pushed a wrinkled envelope across the table. "This is from Jake. He wanted me to give it to you." Inside was a formal-looking letter requesting the agreed-upon financial assistance for baby-related expenses as discussed in January. It cited specific amounts for nursery furniture, a stroller system, and 6 months of projected childcare costs. The total $32,000. "Dad, I never agreed to any of this. I never even discussed it." His expression told me everything. "That's what Jake told us. He said you promised to help them get started, since they're struggling with Tiffany not working." I pushed the letter back toward him. "This is a lie, and I think you know it." My father's silence confirmed my suspicion. He'd known all along, but had gone along with it anyway. "There's more," I said, pulling out my phone to show him the transaction history. "Someone's been using my emergency card for months. Small charges. Restaurants. Shopping. Was that Mom too?" His face crumpled. "Tiffany has been helping your mother with expenses by stealing from me." "Jules." "No, Dad. Call it what it is. Theft." Fraud. I stood up, my coffee untouched. I've already spoken to my bank. They're investigating all the charges. They have security footage from several stores showing Tiffany using my card. This isn't going away. As I turned to leave, he grabbed my wrist. Please, Jules. For the family. For the baby. We'll figure something out. I gently removed his hand. I am figuring something out, Dad. I'm figuring out how to protect myself from the people who should have been protecting me. That night, I received a text from an unknown number, Nordstrom Baby Registry, Friday, 3 p.m. Push present shopping. Don't tell Jake. Attached was a screenshot of my backup credit card information saved in Tiffany's phone. I immediately called all my credit card companies and canceled every card. I placed fraud alerts on my accounts and spent hours changing every password and security question. As I worked, a cold anger settled in me. This wasn't just opportunistic exploitation. This was calculated, systematic financial abuse. The next morning, I made 2 appointments, one with Eleanor's recommended attorney and another with my bank's fraud department. If my family wanted war, I was finally ready to fight back. 2 weeks later, I received a text from Jake Benjamin William Crawford. Arrived at 6:47 a.m. 8 pounds, 2 ounces. 21 inches long. Attached was a photo of a red-faced newborn, wrapped in a hospital blanket. Despite everything, my heart softened at the sight of my nephew. I sent a small gift to the hospital. A soft blue blanket with the baby's initials and a children's book. The card simply read, "Welcome to the world, Benjamin. Love, Aunt Juliet." I didn't go to the hospital. I couldn't face them yet. Not with the legal process barely begun. My attorney, Diane Sherwood, had advised me to maintain distance while we built our case. That distance became even more necessary when my mother launched what Diane called a guilt offensive. Daily texts about how I was punishing an innocent baby by not visiting. Phone calls from relatives who'd heard only their version of events. Even my father, who'd seemed almost understanding during our coffee meeting, left a voicemail saying I was tearing the family apart over money. Then came Tiffany's Instagram post 3 days after Benjamin's birth, a family photo in the hospital room. Jake holding the baby. My parents flanking them. Tiffany's parents and sisters crowded around. The caption, "Family is who shows up." The deliberate exclusion stung. But I reminded myself of what Dr. Wright had said in our session. They're using your desire for connection as a weapon against you. Recognize the manipulation for what it is. I was making progress in therapy. I was standing firm in my boundaries. I had an excellent attorney building a case for identity theft and fraud. I should have felt empowered. Instead, I felt hollow. Alone in a way I'd never experienced before. The family I'd always supported. Emotionally, financially, unconditionally, had discarded me the moment I stopped being useful. That hollowness was replaced by shock when a courier delivered an envelope to my office. Inside was a formal demand letter from an attorney, claiming to represent Jake and Tiffany Crawford. It asserted that I had verbally promised substantial financial support for the child's early years and demanded I honor that commitment or face legal action. I forwarded it to Diane, who called me immediately. "This is desperate and stupid," she said, not bothering with pleasantries. "They have no case. A verbal promise, even if you'd made one which you didn't, wouldn't be legally binding for something like this. But this does tell us they're getting nervous about the fraud investigation." The investigation was moving faster than expected. My bank had pulled security footage from several stores where my card had been used. They'd found evidence of forged signatures on receipts. They'd traced online purchases to IP addresses linked to Tiffany's devices. "We have more than enough for criminal charges," Diane explained. "The question is, do you want to go that route? Did I?" Part of me wanted justice. Part of me couldn't bear the thought of my brother and his wife facing potential jail time, of my nephew growing up with that shadow over his family. "I need to think about it," I told Diane. That decision became clearer the next day, when my company's IT security team contacted me. Someone had attempted to access my work email and financial planning software using my credentials. The attempt had been flagged and blocked, but the IP address matched Tiffany's home network. This wasn't just about family finances anymore. This was an attempt to compromise my professional systems. Systems that contained sensitive client information. It could cost me my career, my license, everything I'd worked for. I called Diane. I want to proceed with criminal charges. She promised to contact the Financial Crimes Unit of the Chicago PD. In the meantime, she suggested I gather any additional evidence I might have. That weekend, I drove to my parents' house, timing my visit for when I knew they'd be at church. I still had a key. They'd never asked for it back. My goal was to find any documents related to the fraudulent spending or the supposed agreement with Jake and Tiffany. The house was quiet as I let myself in. Nothing had changed since my last visit months ago. Same faded furniture, same family photos on the walls, including several of me that I'd never particularly liked. I went straight to my father's home office where he kept all the family financial records. His filing cabinet yielded nothing unusual. But when I checked his computer, I found something that stopped my heart. A spreadsheet titled Juliet's Contributions. It contained a detailed projection of withdrawals from my accounts over the next 5 years. College fund for Benjamin, down payment for a larger house for Jake and Tiffany, retirement supplement for my parents. The total $327,000. My entire projected savings for the next 5 years. They had planned it all out. My future, my security, allocated without my knowledge or consent. I wasn't a daughter or a sister to them. I was an ATM. I printed the spreadsheet, my hands shaking, and heard the front door open. Voices in the hallway. Church must have ended early. I quickly closed everything down and slipped into the guest bathroom with the printout just as my parents walked past the office. "Jules, is that you?" My father's voice, surprised but not angry. I took a deep breath and stepped out. I was just leaving. My mother's face hardened. Coming to apologize finally, I looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman who had raised me, taught me to be independent and strong, was now demanding I surrender that independence for her comfort. "No," I said quietly. "I came to understand why my family thinks they're entitled to ruin my financial future. I think I found my answer." I held up the printout. My father blanched. My mother looked confused, then angry. "You went through our private things. How dare you? How dare I? How dare you plan my financial destruction behind my back? How dare you treat me like a resource instead of a person? We're your family," she shouted. "Family helps family. Help goes both ways, Mom. And it's given freely, not taken. What you've been doing is stealing." My father stepped forward. "Jules, please. We can work this out." "No, Dad. We can't. Not anymore." I moved toward the door. "The police will be contacting you. Both of you. And Jake and Tiffany. There's an official investigation now. Identity theft. Fraud. Attempted computer crimes. You would do that to your own family." My mother's voice broke. "To your brother. To your nephew." I paused at the door, sudden clarity washing over me. I'm not doing anything to them. They did this to themselves when they decided to steal from me. When they decided I wasn't even worth inviting to a baby shower I paid for. I left without looking back. The spreadsheet clutched in my hand like a battle plan for a war I never wanted to fight. The detective from the Financial Crimes Unit was a woman in her 50s named Ramona Diaz. She had kind eyes but a no-nonsense demeanor that I found oddly comforting. "Miss Crawford, I've reviewed the evidence provided by your bank and your attorney," she said as we sat in an interview room at the police station. "This is a clear case of identity theft and fraud. What's less clear is whether you want to press charges against your family members. I'd been wrestling with this question for days. What happens if I do? We'll present the case to the district attorney's office. Given the evidence, they'd likely file criminal charges against Tiffany Crawford as the primary perpetrator, possibly against your brother as an accessory, and potentially against your mother for misuse of the emergency card. Depending on the total amount stolen and the specific charges they could be looking at, fines, restitution, and possibly jail time. Jail time. The words hung in the air between us. And if I don't, the bank will still pursue civil recovery of the fraudulent charges. Your credit would be restored. But without criminal charges, there would be no legal consequence for their actions. Nothing to prevent them from doing this to someone else in the future. That last point struck me. Dr. Wright had mentioned in our sessions that financial abusers rarely have just one victim. If my family had done this to me, someone they presumably loved, what would stop them from doing it to others? I need to press charges, I said finally. Not out of revenge, but because there have to be consequences. Detective Diaz nodded. I understand this is difficult. Family cases always are. But for what it's worth, I think you're making the right decision. As I left the police station, my phone buzzed with a text from Jake. We need to talk. Alone. It's important. After everything, I shouldn't have agreed. But some small part of me still hoped there was a explanation that would make sense of everything that would return my brother to me. We met at a coffee shop I'd never been to before, far from both our usual haunts. Jake looked terrible. Unshaven dark circles under his eyes. Clothes wrinkled, as if he'd slept in them. Thanks for coming, he said, his voice hoarse. I know you probably hate me right now. I don't hate you, Jake. I just don't understand you. He ran a hand through his hair. The police came to our house yesterday. They questioned Tiffany for hours. They took her phone, her laptop. I know, Detective Diaz told me. Are you really going through with this criminal charges? Against your own family? You keep saying that like it should mean something. Like being family gives you the right to steal from me to plan out my financial future, without my consent to exclude me from your life. Except when you want my money. Jake looked down at his untouched coffee. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Then tell me what it was supposed to be like, Jake. Help me understand. He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, in a voice so low, I had to lean in to hear. He said, Tiffany's been manipulating all of us. Me included. What do you mean? When we first got together, she talked about how close your family was, how you all supported each other. She made it sound so normal when she suggested you might want to help with our wedding since you were doing so well financially. When you did help, the rehearsal dinner, remember? It confirmed her belief. I remembered. $10,000 I hadn't planned to spend, but did, because my mother insisted it was tradition for the bride's family to handle the wedding, and the groom's family to handle the rehearsal dinner, despite the fact that Tiffany's family was supposedly wealthy. After that it just escalated. When Mom gave her your emergency card information, just in case, Tiffany saw it as permission. She started small. Lunches, shopping trips with Mom. When there were no consequences, she got bolder. And you knew about this. The whole time. He couldn't meet my eyes. Not at first. Not until the baby shower. By then it felt too late to stop it. And Tiffany, she can be very convincing when she's angry. So you were afraid of your wife's temper, and that justifies stealing thousands of dollars from me. No. Nothing justifies it. I'm just trying to explain. He finally looked up, his eyes wet. The pregnancy wasn't an accident, Jules. Tiffany planned it. She saw how Mom and Dad helped my cousins when they had kids. She thought a baby would be our financial solution. The calculation of it stunned me. She got pregnant for money. Not just that. She wanted a baby. But the timing, that was strategic. A cold realization washed over me. And now there's an innocent child in the middle of all this. I love my son, Jake, said fiercely. Whatever Tiffany's motivations were, Benjamin is innocent in all this. He's the one who'll suffer if his mother goes to jail. And there it was. The real purpose of this meeting. Not to apologize, not to make amends, but to use my nephew as leverage to get me to drop the charges. I stood up, suddenly exhausted by all of it. I'm not dropping the charges, Jake. What you and Tiffany and our parents did was wrong. It was criminal. And if I let it go, you'll never stop. You'll just find new ways, new victims. Jules, please. No. I'm done being your safety net. I'm done being used. If you really care about your son, start being the father he deserves. Be honest. Be ethical. Show him that actions have consequences. I walked out, ignoring his calls after me. I blocked his number before I reached my car. That evening, I signed a lease on a new apartment in a secured building. I changed my phone number, my email addresses, even my usual grocery store and gym. I created a new life where my family couldn't find me unless I wanted to be found. A week later, I received a call from an unknown number. It was a woman who identified herself as Tiffany's friend, Melissa. Tiffany wants to make a deal. She'll pay back everything she took if you drop the criminal charges. She has money saved. Her own money that no one knows about. She can get you $30,000 by the end of the week. Tell Tiffany that justice isn't negotiable. And tell her that $30,000 doesn't even cover what she stole. I hung up, blocked that number too, and called Detective Diaz to report the attempted bribe. Another piece of evidence for the growing case. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following month. I prepared with Diane, gathering all the documentation, steeling myself to face my family in court. I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. I wanted to break the cycle of exploitation that had defined our relationship for too long. What I didn't expect was the package that arrived at my office 3 days before the hearing. No return address, just my name typed on a plain label. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. You deserve to know everything. This goes back further than you think. I debated whether to plug in the drive, wary of viruses or worse. Finally, I asked our IT department to check it on an isolated computer. They confirmed it contained only document files, financial records, emails, and photos spanning the past 15 years. What I found inside shocked me to my core. This wasn't just about me. This was a family pattern that stretched back to before I was even working. Emails between Tiffany and her friends discussing how to milk the Crawford cash cow. Records showing similar financial exploitation of my father's sister years ago, driving her to cut ties with the family, an aunt I'd been told had abandoned us out of selfishness. Photos of Tiffany with expensive purchases hidden from Jake, tagged with captions like "Sucker, sister-in-law strikes again." The sender of the package remained a mystery until the day before the hearing, when I received a text from another unknown number. Did you get my package? It's Carol, your aunt. We should talk. The aunt I'd been told had abandoned our family. The aunt who apparently had her own story to tell. Aunt Carol and I met for breakfast at a quiet restaurant near my new apartment. I hardly remembered her. She'd left when I was 12, but there was something familiar in the set of her jaw, the directness of her gaze. You look like your grandmother, she said as we sat down. She was the only straight shooter in the family, too. Why did you send me those records? I asked. Not ready for small talk or compliments. Because I've been where you are. Because I wanted you to know you're not crazy. And you're not alone. She stirred her coffee methodically. Your father and I grew up in a household where financial exploitation was normalized. Our mother used our father's income however she wanted. When he objected, she'd weaponize emotions. Guilt, obligation, family loyalty. Sound familiar? It sounded exactly like what I'd been experiencing. When I got my first good job, they expected me to support them. When I refused, I became the family villain. They told everyone I'd abandoned them in their time of need. They never mentioned that their need was a luxury cruise and a new car. Dad told me you just stopped caring about family, I said quietly. Carol laughed without humor. I cared enough to protect myself. That was unforgivable to them. She reached across the table to touch my hand. I've kept tabs on you over the years. When I saw what was happening, the baby shower drama splashed all over social media, the hints about your financial support. I knew they were doing to you what they did to me. How did you get those records? The emails between Tiffany and her friends. I have resources. And Tiffany isn't as clever as she thinks. She's done this before Juliet. To her ex-husband's family. To former friends. The pattern is always the same. Identify someone financially stable. Integrate into their life. Create situations where they're expected to pay escalate over time. Jake says he didn't know at first. That by the time he figured it out, he felt trapped. Carol's expression softened slightly. Your brother was always eager to please, desperate for approval. The perfect target for someone like Tiffany. I'm not excusing what he did, but I understand how it happened. We talked for hours. Carol filled in the gaps in my family history. Patterns of financial exploitation, emotional manipulation, and scapegoating that went back generations. By the time we parted, I felt both horrified by the scope of the dysfunction and oddly relieved. This wasn't about me being selfish or cold. This was about breaking a toxic cycle. What will you do after the hearing? Carol asked as we prepared to leave. I don't know. I can't imagine having a relationship with them again, but completely cutting ties feels a final. Whatever you decide, you have family who supports you now, she said, hugging me. You're not alone in this. The morning of the hearing, I dressed carefully. A navy blue suit that conveyed professionalism without ostentation. Diane met me outside the courthouse, her briefcase bulging with evidence. The DA is confident, she told me as we walked in. The evidence is overwhelming. They're hoping your family will take a plea deal to avoid a full trial. As we entered the courtroom, I saw them for the first time in weeks. My mother and father huddled together on one bench, Jake and Tiffany on another. Tiffany was holding Benjamin, using him as a shield or perhaps a prop for sympathy. My mother wouldn't look at me. My father looked defeated. Jake looked terrified. And Tiffany looked calculating, her eyes constantly scanning the room as if seeking escape routes. The proceedings began with the prosecutor outlining the charges: identity, theft, fraud, unauthorized use of financial instruments, conspiracy. As the evidence was presented, security footage of Tiffany using my card, the forged signatures, the documented pattern of escalating theft, I watched my family's faces. My mother's shock suggested she hadn't known the full extent of what had been happening. My father's resignation indicated he had. When the prosecutor presented the spreadsheet detailing their plans for my future earnings, the one I'd found on my father's computer, my mother gasped audibly. She turned to my father with betrayal written across her face. He stared straight ahead, unable to meet her eyes or mine. Tiffany's attorney attempted to paint me as a vindictive sister, jealous of her brother's happiness. A successful but lonely woman punishing her family for having what she couldn't achieve. It was a desperate strategy that fell apart when the prosecutor introduced a surprise witness. A man named Daniel Brooks, who identified himself as Tiffany's former brother-in-law, Miss Barnes. Now, Mrs. Crawford did the same thing to our family when she was married to my brother, he testified. She identified my parents as financially secure, integrated herself into our family, then began systematic financial exploitation. When confronted, she used pregnancy and later the baby to deflect consequences. The courtroom was silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just about me. This was a pattern, a calculated scheme that Tiffany had perfected over years. By the end of the hearing, the judge had enough evidence to move forward with a criminal trial. However, the DA offered a plea deal: full restitution of all stolen funds plus damages, 5 years of probation for Tiffany, mandatory financial counseling for all involved, and a restraining order, preventing any of them from accessing my financial information or accounts again. After consultation with my attorney and Detective Diaz, I agreed to the terms. I didn't want my family in jail. I wanted them to understand what they'd done and face real consequences without destroying their lives completely. Mostly, I wanted to be free of the exploitation that had defined our relationship for so long. As we prepared to leave the courtroom, Jake approached me without Tiffany this time. He looked broken, his confident swagger replaced by genuine remorse. I'm so sorry, Jules. For everything. I don't expect forgiveness. But I want you to know, I'm going to fix this. Not just the money. Us. Me. I'm moving out. Getting help. I want to be a father Benjamin can be proud of. For the first time in months, I saw a glimpse of my real brother. The one who had once been my best friend before greed and manipulation poisoned our relationship. I hope you do, Jake. For Benjamin's sake. For your own. As I walked away, my mother called after me, her voice cracking, "Juliet, please. Don't leave it like this." I turned back one last time. "This is how you left it, Mom. When you decided my money was more important than my presence. When you excluded me from my own brother's life. While using me as an ATM. This is the relationship you created." I walked out of the courtroom with Diane and Aunt Carol flanking me, a new kind of family forming around me. One based on respect, honesty, and genuine care. The judge ruled in my favor that day. Justice would be served. But the real victory was in finally breaking free from the chains of financial exploitation and emotional manipulation that had bound me to a toxic family system for so long. 6 months after the court hearing, I stood in front of a room full of women at a financial literacy workshop I'd created. Financial boundaries aren't just about money, I told them. They're about self-worth. About recognizing that you deserve to enjoy the fruits of your labor. That supporting others shouldn't mean sacrificing yourself. The workshop was part of a program I'd developed for victims of family financial abuse. A phenomenon far more common than I'd realized before my own experience. My boss, Eleanor, had not only supported the idea, but had made it an official community outreach initiative for our firm. Empowered clients make better decisions, she'd said. And helping others heal helps you heal too. She was right. In helping these women recognize and escape financial exploitation, I was continuing my own recovery process. My professional life had flourished in unexpected ways. Rather than damaging my career, standing up for myself had demonstrated integrity and financial responsibility. Qualities our clients valued. I'd received a promotion to senior financial advisor, with a team working under my guidance. My personal life had transformed as well. The new apartment had become a true home. Peaceful, secure, filled with things that brought me joy rather than obligation. I'd reconnected with friends who'd drifted away during my years of family drama, and I'd started dating Michael, a kind, ethical man who respected my boundaries and understood my journey. The greatest surprise had been the development of a relationship with my nephew. 3 months after the hearing, Jake had contacted me through Aunt Carol, asking if I would consider meeting Benjamin. Jake and Tiffany had separated, his decision apparently triggered by discoveries he'd made after the court case about other lies she'd told. Our first meeting was awkward but meaningful. Jake brought 4-month-old Benjamin to a park near my apartment. As I held my nephew for the first time, feeling his solid weight and watching his curious eyes, I made a silent promise. This child would never learn to exploit others the way his parents and grandparents had. If I remained in his life, I would model different values. "I'm in therapy," Jake told me, as Benjamin dozed in my arms. "Twice a week. Learning about codependency, financial boundaries, how to be a better father in person. I don't expect you to trust me again, Jules. I just want Benjamin to know his aunt." Over time, these park meetings became regular occurrences. Jake was working hard in therapy, taking responsibility for his actions without blaming Tiffany or our parents. He'd found a job at a sporting goods store. Modest work compared to his previous sales position, but honest. He was paying off his portion of the restitution in small, consistent increments. My relationship with my parents developed more slowly. The court-ordered financial counseling had opened my mother's eyes to patterns she'd never recognized. My father, too, was confronting decades of dysfunctional behavior. They sent letters at first, handwritten apologies that acknowledged specific harms, rather than generic requests for forgiveness. 6 months after the hearing, I agreed to meet them for lunch with Aunt Carol present, as both support and witness. The conversation was difficult, but necessary. "We failed you," my father said simply. "We treated you like a resource instead of a daughter." "I'm more sorry than I can express." My mother, always quicker to emotion than accountability, struggled more. "I didn't see what was happening. I let myself be manipulated by Tiffany. But that's no excuse. I should have protected you, not exploited you. Why didn't you just ask me for help?" I finally voiced the question that had haunted me. If you were struggling financially, why resort to theft and lies? "I would have helped if you'd been honest." They exchanged glances. "Pride," my father admitted. "Shame about our financial mistakes. And honestly, Jules, we'd come to feel entitled to your success, as if we'd earned a share of it simply by being your parents." It was wrong, deeply wrong. That lunch didn't magically heal our relationship, but it opened a door to something new. Something healthier, with clear boundaries and expectations. We began a careful rebuilding, meeting in public places, talking openly about finances and feelings, acknowledging the harm that had been done. Tiffany remained the only family member I had no contact with. As part of her probation, she was required to complete financial counseling and pay restitution, but she showed little remorse. According to Jake, she'd already found a new potential victim. A recently divorced doctor she'd met at Benjamin's daycare. He'd warned the man anonymously, unsure if the warning would be heeded. The family I'd once known had fractured. But from those fragments, something healthier was forming. Aunt Carol had become a central figure in my life, the mentor and friend I'd never known I had. My relationship with Jake was tentative, but improving as he continued his own growth. Even my parents were slowly earning back limited trust through consistent respect for boundaries. Most importantly, I'd formed connections outside my blood relations, a chosen family of friends who valued me for myself, not what I could provide. Sarah from work had become a true best friend. Michael was showing me what healthy partnership looked like. Dr. Wright continued to guide my healing journey. One sunny Saturday, I hosted a small gathering at my apartment. Aunt Carol, Jake, and Benjamin, Sarah, and her husband Michael, and a few other close friends. As I looked around at these people who genuinely cared for me, who respected my boundaries and valued my authentic self, I felt a sense of peace I'd never known within my original family system. Benjamin, now 9 months old, crawled happily from person to person, secure in the knowledge that he was loved unconditionally. Watching him, I made a silent vow that the cycle of financial exploitation and emotional manipulation would end with my generation. This child would grow up understanding healthy boundaries, genuine love, and the true meaning of family. Later, as Michael and I walked along the lakefront, he asked what I was thinking. "I was thinking about expensive lessons," I said, watching the sunset paint the water gold. "The baby shower I wasn't invited to cost me thousands of dollars in the moment, but it ultimately saved me hundreds of thousands I would have lost over a lifetime of exploitation. More importantly, it taught me what was truly priceless: my self-respect and the power to define family on my own terms." He squeezed my hand. "You paid a high price for that wisdom." "I did," I agreed. "But freedom and self-worth are worth every penny." As we continued our walk, I reflected on the journey of the past year. From victim to advocate, from financial exploitation to empowerment, from toxic bonds to healthy connections. The path had been painful, but the destination was a life truly my own, built on respect, authenticity, and joy. The most expensive lesson I ever paid for taught me what was truly priceless: my self-respect and the courage to define family on my own terms. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with people you love? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to hear more real-life journeys, and share with someone who might need to know they're not alone in facing family financial challenges. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you deserve to protect what you've worked hard to build.